I've now started recording. So yeah, so what we call this is every child a swimmer. So the challenge for us is that we are going to have to try and make our children drown proof. So my challenge to you is this. One of the issues we've got in schools is a lot of people beat themselves up around 25 meters and being able to do recognizable strokes and all the rest of it. But our primary objective, our principal objective, is we have to make sure our children are drown proof. We've got water everywhere. You've got Cambridgeshire is particularly wet as a county because we've got the fens, we've got the rivers, we've got gravel pits and all sorts of other bits of water around. And we've got to try and make our children drown proof. That's our principal objective, and everything else will follow. So this is my challenge, and what I've said here by workshop is going to be 2 sessions. So by the end of these workshops, you will be able to, individually and working together, you'll help support a healthy and safe environment in and around the swimming pool. I will explain to you, and we'll have a greater understanding of what swimming and water safety actually is, what it really means. I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about what we call the Learn to Swim framework, which is what I think is cutting edge. It's probably the best framework in the country for teaching children to swim, and it's something produced by Swim England, and I'm a huge advocate for this package, but I'll tell you more about that when we get going. I want to spend today's session, this is what our focus in today will be, is around what we call the core aquatic skills, and I'll explain about that in a couple of minutes, and the strokes. And the strokes are what we're going to be talking about in our second session. So for today, the focus is on what we call core aquatic skills and building up confidence in water. And then the second session will be building upon that foundation and actually looking at the strokes. So if everybody's okay with that, this is what we're going to be doing today. So I'm going to set you off to now, as I'm going to ask you to discuss what are your likes and dislikes of teaching swimming. So have a think, and then I'm going to ask you to use the chat box or make yourself or unmute yourself, whichever way you want to do it. We've got a chat box somewhere. I'll try and set that up. So the chat box is available to you. Everybody can see this. So you can either write something in the chat box or unmute yourself. But what are your likes and dislikes of teaching swimming? So let's start off with let's get the bad news out of the way first. What is it that you maybe potentially feel anxious about with regard to teaching swimming? Who's going to be brave and go first?
So my complete lack of experience. I've never taught it. That is mildly terrifying to me.
Okay. Anyone else like to add anything?
Yeah, for me, it's not having the swimming qualification. As my children learn to swim, you always expect a child to learn to swim being taught by a qualified swimming instructor.
Okay.
And it's the fear of the parents knowing that it's just a TA teaching them or whatever.
Okay, anyone else got any other reservations, thoughts, anxieties?
I think I'm not too bad if they're with this sort of what you would call the higher group who have sort of got the skills already and developing that, if you like. It's the initial basic
Okay.
literally teaching them how to swim rather than the developing stroke technique.
Okay, that's good. And what about the potential likes of teaching swimming? What are the positives? What what excites you? So yes, I appreciate that people are slightly anxious or have some sort of potential reluctance, but what do you think are the benefits to you as a teacher, or what are you really looking forward to maybe getting your teeth into?
I think the different setting is always good in terms of just the different skills that you need to use, and also you tend to see fairly tangible week-on-week progression. Maybe not week on week, but certainly across a half term, you can physically see the progression in ways you perhaps don't in all.
Yeah, I would totally agree
in
with
other
that.
lessons.
Yeah, so you get very clear progress and children making progress, and not only do they make progress, they understand it themselves, so they feel that they're making progress. So that obviously has a huge impact. Anything else that people might add about swimming? What about as a parent? Some of you are parents, no doubt. What about you when your own children have been swimming?
Just that achievement that they get by being in the water and being able to float, let alone swim, by the time they've had a few lessons.
I would agree with that. The one thing I was going to add is that if ever you want to hear children having fun, they'll get it in water. So it's that opportunity, and it's not just physical. There's I think what we might call a holistic benefit to it. So you'll get that social benefit of working with their friends that are at their comfort zone. It's a different environment to school. But if you want to hear laughter and you want to hear fun, then go where you've got children in water, and that applies as much to the beach as it does to a swimming pool. So it's a huge benefit to children, not only from a physical perspective, from a safety perspective, but from a social behavioral perspective. Okay, so it's a very, very valuable experience. And Linda's written, actually, there is an end result. You can see the progress made. Exactly. So that's what we're talking about. So
I had to write the chat box because I wasn't sure how to say something, but
that's fine.
there we go.
Okay. Okay, good. So first things first, and this is just pertinent for the moment, we have never needed this more. The levels of swimming, and I'll tell you about the actual physical swimming levels at the moment in a second, but just generally about physical activity and the impact of COVID. I've got 2 kids here. I've just heard the door bang, so one's just going from school. So 19% of children, only 19% of children met the chief medical officer's recommended 60 minutes of daily physical activity during lockdown. 43% of children did less than half an hour, and 7% did none at all. 1 in 3 children experienced mental health issues, including stress, loneliness, anxiety, and worry, etc. And the educational gaps have widened, but yet 37% of children and young people said that they now see sport and PE as more important than ever. 4 million children plan to do more exercise in the future. And we have never needed swimming more than ever, than now. Our current year 6s have not had a normal year of education since they were in year 3. So a lot of your children will not have swum or will have done very little swimming in the last 2 or 3 years. And this is really, really important to us. So my next question to you is, because I'm not going to stand here and talk for the next, or sit here and talk for the next hour and a bit, I'm going to get you talking. My next question is, a parent contacts you as a class teacher or as a TA or as a school, and they want their little Freddie, little Martha, or whoever it is, they want them withdrawn from swimming because chances are it's because they can already swim. They've done their Rainbow Awards. They don't think they need to do swimming in your lessons anymore. How do you think the school should respond to this? Okay, so I'm going to ask you again. Normally I'd send you off to a breakout room, but there's only 5 of us. So anyone got any thoughts about how you would respond to this? What should be the official response of the school? So a parent wants their little one withdrawn from school swimming lessons because they can already swim.
No.
Okay.
But
why?
Well, because you don't stop doing guided reading if you can already read, do you?
I love it.
Yeah.
Excellent. So just because they can add up, that doesn't mean they're
Not that would what would go in the email, but that would be.
I would be tempted to put something like that in an email. Yeah. So just because they can read doesn't mean they can opt out of English lessons. Any other thoughts?
I mean, my initial response was the same as Chris's, but my example was writing. If you can already write, doesn't mean you can just opt out of it. It's obviously aspects of the curriculum. So yeah, it would be a fairly straightforward answer of that's unfortunate. And then we've obviously got the fact that it's like you said, it's a life-saving skill. And so part of our curriculum is based on the fact that they need to be able to rescue themselves. Absolutely.
So what I've got is just something to share with you. So this is 3 headlines from a national strategy for swimming. So I'll just read them. I'll let you read them yourselves. You don't need me to read it to you, but I'll pick out the headline in a second. So if the parent was on the phone, this is what I'd be saying. So we're an island nation, we've got river, we've got water everywhere. Every child at some point will be around water. You can't be more, I don't think in this country, you can't be more than 400 meters from water. By the time a child is ready to leave primary school, they should be able to swim, know how to get out of trouble if they fall into water, know the dangers of water, and understand how to stay safe when playing in and around it. That's really, really important. Children can, sadly, they could drown in 6 inches of water. Moving that on further, I was lucky enough to do some work with the Department of Education earlier this year, some national Zoom calls about swimming. This is what the Department of Education gave as something that can be copied and pasted into a letter. So again, I'll ask you to, I'm not going to read that to you, I'll let you read that out yourselves, but you can probably see the headlines there. The key point is it's a statutory entitlement, a statutory requirement. It's mandatory for children to swim. They should be swimming in schools. They have no option to be disapplied from swimming lessons. Okay, so our children should swim, and that's why it's so important. That's why it's so good that gratifying that you've asked me to do this session. So that's elements of the dry bit out of the way. A couple of key statistics. 77% of children can swim 25 meters by the time they leave primary school. So this is from 2018, but that figure drops to 42% for children from the least affluent families and is at 86 for the most. So I'm not sure where your school demographic fits within that. But if we were to look at that number now, after 18 months of COVID, the 77% is now down to 65%, and the 42 is now down to 35%. So the number of children swimming has fallen dramatically as a consequence of the last 18 months and the experience they've had. But we've got to recognise that some areas are genuine pinch points, and we've got to address this issue. So just going back to the national curriculum, there are 3 targets that we have to achieve. So every child by the end of year 6, we have to report against 3 things. And a lot of schools beat themselves up around the second one, number 2. They should be able to swim confidently for 25 meters. I've turned that around. I think the top one is the most important. Our children should be able to perform safe self-rescue in different water-based situations. Then they should be able to swim 25 meters, and then they should be able to use a range of strokes. We have to prioritize the first one. Okay, and we can do some of that on dry land, but I'll save that for the second workshop that we're going to do. And I will explain this in a little bit more detail with the benefit of a video, and hopefully you should be able to hear this or see this. No, my video is not working. I shall come back to that in a second. So basically, this was a little video I had ready to go, which was based around a little boy in Scarborough who was swept away and got into a safe self-rescue position. So the first one is we should be able to understand water safety and key messages, know how and when to use appropriate survival and safe self-rescue, knowledge and understanding of local and national water hazards, and knowledge of what to do if others get into trouble. So it's really important our children know what to do if they get into trouble. And that is a really important message. What I'm going to do is I do apologize. I'm going to drop out of this video, out of the PowerPoint. I'm going to go back in because I want to know why my video is not working. So stop share. Bear with me. Just talk amongst yourselves while I'm trying to get my video to work. I'm going to make this happen. Yeah.
Linda, you were in the meeting twice. It's impressive.
Well, I got kicked out the first time.
It's amazing. Two places at once. I suppose you're in the same place twice, actually. Kind of the opposite of two places at once.
You know me.
Right, I'm going to try again.
No.
Bear with me.
Me and my dad went to the water and then we accidentally went too far.
He's keep asking, daddy, help, and I could do nothing.
After I was thinking that this is the end of my life. Is it really happening?
If any accident happen, suddenly happen. And that day he's slowly going to die on front of my eye.
Sometimes I was shouting, but then my throat got dry, so then I stopped.
We were coming back north along the shoreline, and I just spotted a glimpse of his red t-shirt in the water, and we were just so relieved when we saw him breathing and actually asking for help, because you never know what we might find with that amount of time in the water.
But if they just float until the cold water shock has passed.
It's basically on your back whilst you're being a starfish.
The little boy, he was floating on his back, doing exactly the right thing, float to live, with his arms spread out, exactly right, not panicking. He's obviously very cold and scared, and you know, I reassured him. His first words to me was, "I want to see my parents."
I was like, yay, they finally came to get me, and now I've got a second chance to live.
I think it takes a special type of person to actually, you know, pluck up that courage and remember what he'd learned. I mean, and it's an inspiration to us all.
When our children going to die in front of our eye, how we feel. He got second life.
They're your heroes.
Yes.
Did you all, just to check, famous last words, were you able to hear the sound? So that, I managed to salvage the situation. That is why we have to really focus as water safety on our first priority, particularly in Cambridgeshire and East Anglia, where we've got so much water. So that little boy has learned to do a float to live from a TV program. That doesn't have to be a TV program. That could be a lesson in school. That could be a PSHE lesson. That could be an assembly. It could be any lesson in any context. It doesn't have to be in a swimming pool. So that's why our first priority when you're delivering swimming in schools, in primary schools, has to be safe self-rescue. And as you saw, the little boy has done a float to live, which we'll talk about in a bit more detail in a few minutes. And here we are. So the children need to not only know how to do it, but they also need to understand the context in which where this can happen. So the national curriculum makes reference to water-based situations. So we need to understand, and there's my list here of examples of where an incident could happen and where it could occur in different ways. And these could happen. This is genuine stuff, and we will read on a regular basis in the newspaper about, sadly, little kids getting into trouble. One of our challenges, and it's slightly connected to this, well, in fact, it's very connected to this, but it's connected to P in general, is that they reckon that 75% of accidental drownings involving young children happen within 5 feet of safety. And this is because those children can sometimes get to the side, but they can't get out. So getting out of the pool is really important. And often our children haven't got the upper body strength that we had as kids from climbing trees and climbing frames and climbing bus shelters and whatever else we did as kids when we were just growing up. Our children don't do that. And so they're not fit enough. And a lot of kids are sadly drowning because they can't get out of the water. So that safe rescue is part of this process. So it's not only being able to float on your back and do a float to live, but it's actually being able to get out of the water. So the second of our challenges is 25 meters. And the strokes should be as strong at the start as they are at the end, or sorry, at the end as they were at the start. And they should be recognizable to an informed onlooker. And one of the challenges we've got, going back to that question I asked you, is we've got children often come to school and they say, well, I've got my rainbow badge. I've done my 25-meter badge on a Sunday at the local Water Babies swim club. And what I've seen, even when my own daughter's learning to swim, is sometimes they're giving those badges away where they haven't deserved them. And your children are coming in, they can swim 25 meters for where maybe the first 17 meters have a stroke, and the last 7 or 8 meters are more like doggy paddle, and they're getting there by huffing and puffing. That's not national curriculum level swimming. And that's why we almost always have a reservation about these badges and certificates that kids come in with. And the third one is just the strokes, which we'll be talking about next time we meet, especially being taught and be able to swim with recognizable strokes. And there's 3 recognizable strokes that we would tend to push. We probably would tend to leave the butterfly, dolphin butterfly swimming stroke for when they're older or for when they go to swim clubs. So, and there we are. And it's not only be able to swim the strokes, but actually put them into different contexts. So we've used here as a normal swimming. They could be playing water polo, they could be treading water, but being able to adapt those strokes for different contexts. Okay, so the key thing is we've got to have regular swimming lessons plus water safety, and that will bring in great swimmers. That's our challenge. So we have some principles which I want to share with you. Successful teaching in all subjects, not just in swimming, is dependent on those things. And that doesn't matter whether you're a very experienced qualified teacher, or you're a teaching assistant, or you're even a parent working and supporting swimming lessons. These principles must apply if we're going to get the best outcomes from our children. Okay, so I'll just let you have a quick look through that list, and then I want to move on to the nitty-gritty of what we're going to be talking about. Okay. And a few things. Safety must permeate all aspects of swimming because of the nature of the activity. So when we come to do the organization of the pupils and the organization of the swimming pool itself, safety has to be core to that process. And we're going to be talking about the organization of the pupils in our second session. And equipment must be used safely. And I go to lots of swimming pools and I see it often sitting on the side and people tripping over it. It's in the way. We shouldn't be clustering at the pool space, but we'll be talking about that the next time we meet. So that moves on to what we call core aquatic skills. And this is the spine of what we're going to talk about this evening. So if you teach PE or you support PE lessons, you may be familiar with fundamental movement skills, fundamental motor skills, or whatever we might call it, the agility, the balance, coordination, catching, running, jumping, and throwing. They're the fundamental movement skills. But swimming isn't referenced there because they have a separate one. It's called the core aquatic skills. And they're the building blocks for more upon which we build everything else. So they're the foundation of all swimming. And that's the basis of your swimming lessons. And the building blocks are really, really important that we teach these in a fun way. And what I'm going to do now is go through these with you and get you thinking about how you might do these things. And I'll get you banging heads together. So the first one I want to focus on is a video. So that is a promotional video for something called the Swimming Charter, but it's the fundamentals of what we're going to be talking about here. And I've got all the resources from the Swimming Charter, which I'll put into a Google Drive and send it over to you, Jason, for you to share with everybody, to give them some ideas, which we can take away to talk about next time we meet. But what we're here talking about is really what we call the core aquatic skills. So they're the sport-specific skills that all swimmers will learn. So whether you're a little kiddie who's in year 6 or Adam PT winning countless gold medals, they will all start with the core aquatic skills. And they are fundamental to everything they do. And as I said in the previous couple of slides, it's vital we teach this in a fun way. I remember when I was a kid at school, it was just back and forth from one side of the swimming pool to the other, almost to the point where we felt like we were being beasted in the swimming pool. We've got to move away from that, particularly in primary schools, and make it as fun and as engaging as possible. Okay, so the first things first, I want you to think about, as a teacher or as a parent, what you've got a new group of non-swimmers. So we've covered all the safety, you know, you're not allowed to run, you must do this when the whistle blows, etc., etc. The children having all the safety rules have been explained, but we've now going to get them in the water. What do you think are the 3 things that you'd want all participants to be able to do before you do anything else? Okay, so what are the first 3? What are the priorities for our non-swimmers once they're in or around the swimming pool with regard to what we want them to learn? What should come before everything else?
How to get in.
Excellent, good. Number 1, how to get in.
How to get out.
How to get out. Well done, Alice.
Just be willing to get in the water. Some are frightened of the water before you even start.
Excellent. So what part of that is really important? What is it about getting in the water that might frighten them?
A lot of them
get their face wet.
Get their face wet. So they've got into the water, they can get out of the water, they can get their face wet. What else do we want them to do in the water?
Have fun.
Let's go back a stage. Before we have fun, well, we want to have fun anyway, but we want them to do something from a more teaching perspective, from a more swimming perspective.
Move in the water.
Excellent. So this is what we want to be able to do. You know, so you've answered it. Basically, get in and out of the water safely. That's the first priority. Being able to move around the pool with their feet on the floor and be comfortable with their water on the face. And they should be the first priority for all non-swimmers in all lessons. And I've seen lessons or schools teaching lessons where they're starting to think of, they're getting way beyond this point. They want to get kids swimming, moving forwards, but they haven't got this bit. This is an absolutely vital bit. And I don't know if you saw the documentary series. I think it's part of Sport Relief or Children in Need a couple of years ago, where there was some famous people being taught to swim. I think Linford Christie was one of them, Nagaman Chetty, the lady off Breakfast News. Various people had never been taught to swim, and it was adults learning to swim as part of a TV documentary. They went through exactly the same process as your children will go through. So Linford Christie had to be taught how to get out of the water. Nagaman Chetty had to be taught how to be comfortable with water on the face because she'd never been in the pool before. Obviously, she goes in a shower, so she's not a child, but the same principles have got to underpin everything they do. Okay. So the first things first, what methods can you think of that you might have of getting into the water and out of the water? So let's enter. So how to get into the water. Any thoughts? What are they?
Ladder.
Okay, so use of the ladder. So then that's taught. That's not something which we just say, okay, there's the ladder, get in. That is fraught with potential problems because it's slippy, it's short, it's not very long, it's into water, so it's going into a different environment. And we've got we need to recognize the fact that the ladder needs to be taught. Okay, anything else?
Sit on the side.
Okay, how would you get in off from the side?
2 arms to your side, twist round.
Okay, so I think so you'd sit and turn, yeah. Any others?
Could dive.
Let's go back a stage.
Can you
jump
walk
in?
into the pool?
Jump. Good. So we jump. I wouldn't have them diving yet. Let's hold fire on that one.
Set the bar high.
Yeah, that's right.
Can you use walking if there's a slope?
Yep. So they'd walk into the pool. So sometimes, particularly if they go to a special school, there might be a slope into the pool. Anything else? This is my list. Okay. So this is the key thing, is this needs to be taught. So they can walk into the pool. So you'll go to some schools, particularly special schools where there's a ramp into the water, they'll walk in. Steps. So some schools will have, some pools will have steps into the water. Ladders, they need to be taught how to use the ladder. Sitting and turning, and jumping in. I would hold the diving for a while. Okay, but they are the simple, most fundamental ways of getting into the water. The next bit is moving around the pool, and we've got to encourage these through activities and games. So we've got them into the water, we've taught them how to get in, we've gone through the safety rules. We've now got to think about how can we get these children to be confident, because a lot of the children, they'll be feeling their way, because a lot of these kids, the swimming pool it's like getting into the Atlantic. And I can remember when I did this role previously in Bedfordshire, it's probably a decade ago now, more than I think 12 years ago, we had a situation where we had to investigate a drowning or a near drowning. And out of a class of 25 year threes, 23 had never been in a body of water in their first swimming lesson. And that includes a bath, because they were largely a community where they lived in flats and cluster homes where they just had showers. So getting into the swimming pool for them was like going into the Atlantic for the rest of us. So they were not familiar. They were seriously out of their comfort zone, just knowing where the bottom of the pool is. So we've got to get them to build up their confidence so they can hop, they can walk holding onto the slide. So we can encourage that as part of an activity. Anyone who's been a parent, I think we call this cruising. So the children are learning to walk. And I think when my daughter was learning to walk, she would walk holding onto the sofa as she was going along. We vary the height, length of the steps, shoulders above the water, below the surface. We're building up confidence by stealth. And what I'm going to do is show you a video.
Moving can be as simple as walking, hopping, skipping or jumping in shallow water. The pupils should experience a variety of aids, water depths, toys and games to achieve this outcome. A support teacher in the water can be used at this stage and can be seen here giving encouragement, but the child is nonetheless achieving this outcome of moving forward. With a group in deep water, appropriate buoyancy aids are used. This gives the pupils the opportunity to explore and discover how they can control their body position while still achieving the desired outcome. In summary, moving can be done in a variety of ways in deep or shallow water, and with or without aids and support as appropriate. A support teacher can be used to help when necessary.
So what we've got just through the first priority, these are the core aquatic skills, as you can see in the little blue boxes around the outside of my circle. Entries, exits, buoyancy and balance, I'll come back to in a second, water safety, rotation, orientation, travel and coordination, aquatic breathing, and streamlining. So our first priority is those first three: entries, exits, travel and coordination. Okay, and we can build those up through confidence building games, aquatic games. And when we finish this session, I'm going to share with Jason, as I said earlier, a Google Drive full of resources for you to go off and fill your boots and have a read through and print off what you want. And there's a huge raft of ideas there to help build up confidence and various games. Okay, so the next challenge to you is the pupils can get in safely out of the water, and they can move around confident with their feet on the bottom, so they can jump about and bounce about and hop about and get their shoulder in the water. What activities do you think you could come up with to help get your pupils comfortable with water on their face or putting their face in the water? Okay, so what sort of things do we do? How can we build up this confidence for children to get their faces wet? Because that's a challenge for a lot of children.
Blowing raspberries.
Blowing raspberries, good. So yeah, being a speedboat.
Who can make the most noise?
Yeah, good. Any others?
Collecting things from the bottom.
Okay. Yeah. Anything else?
Could they splash each other?
They could splash each other. What toys could you take with you? If there's no reason for us to differentiate between what we do in a swimming pool with what we maybe do with our own children when they're toddlers in the bath.
You could have squirty toys, hoops.
Squirty toys, yeah. Watering cans. Any others?
In that video, they were blowing a toy forwards, and they'd have to get quite low to the water to be able to.
Yeah, so you could be blowing things like rubber ducks along the water. There's a toy, or it's not really a toy, but there's a resource called an egg flip, which looks like a little it looks like a flying saucer, and you get the children to try and flip it over by blowing at the right angle, so their mouth is in the water but their nose is above it. There's various things we can do. So we got things like splashing water on the face. So they're basically, their hands are under the water and they're splashing the water upwards. We're getting to put different parts of the head or the face in the water. So you can play a game of Simon Says. So you can say, okay, Simon says, put your nose in the water. Simon says, put your ear in the water, put your chin in the water, and so on. Washing the face, they take the water to the face. They take the face to the water. So they put their hands under the water and they're actually now putting their face in the water, blowing bubbles the way we talked about. Pouring water over the head with a bucket, with a watering can, blowing bubbles with the mouth of the water. So somebody said, blowing raspberries, be a motorbike, be a motorboat, blowing balls along the water, ping pong balls, rubber ducks, egg flips across the surface, walking with their face in the water, looking at the pool floor. So there's so many things you can do just to build up confidence. And one of the resources I'm going to share with you is, this is from Change for Life, but it's called Swim for Life. And this is a really good resource for families, but I think it's perfect for schools. So I've just basically extracted 2 pages from it for the slide, but I think it's a document with about 11 pages. So it's probably the best part of 15 different activities you can do. So you've got underwater humming, the mirror game, you've got What's the Time, Mr. Wolf, all lots of really, really good activities to build up confidence for children in water, because that's what it's all about at the moment. We are simply getting our kids happy and confident in a body of water to make them safe.
The teacher is looking for confidence in the execution of this basic skill of washing the face. Pupils should be encouraged to scoop the water in their hands and wash their face. The pupils should appear relaxed and at ease throughout the activity. Many pools have water features that can be used for this outcome. The pupils should be able to move confidently through the flowing water without fuss or distress. Simple watering cans can be used by the teacher to pour water over the pupil's face and head to get their faces wet. The swimmer should show an ability to blink and blow the water clear of the face with confidence.
So just simple activities like that are really important, and they will become the core of your first lessons in the water with children. Okay, so, and this is actually building up the confidence to breathe underwater or to breathe in the water. So within the core aquatic skills, they refer to this as submersion and aquatic breathing. We're talking about blowing bubbles. It's all part of the same process. So Adam Peaty's first experience of learning to breathe while he's swimming would have been doing the same things we've just been talking about. So kids need to be comfortable with water on their face. They need to be able to develop breathing skills in the water, blowing bubbles, picking up sinkers. So I've got a huge set of resources, which we call sinkers, and you can buy them anywhere. They're just things that sink in the water. I remember when I was a kid growing up, it was a question of going to retrieve a rubber brick off the bottom of the pool. We don't do that so much now. You can get things which are a lot more attractive, a lot more interesting. And there's lots which are in the shapes of torpedoes and fish and sea anemones and all sorts of, and seaweed. There's lots of things that the children can collect off the bottom, some of which will sink to the bottom, some will sink to halfway. There's lots of really good activities and good fun activities you can do with children to get them to collect them up. They can swim through hoops, they can swim under noodles, and there's lots of things that children can do. So we can do things like bobbing. So they're basically holding their breath and blowing bubbles at the surface and then blowing bubbles under the water, gradually increasing the depth of the bob, the number of bobs they do, touching the floor with different body parts, a bit like the Simon Says again. Simon Says, touch your knee on the bottom. Simon Says, touch your elbow on the bottom. So we're building up confidence to put their faces under the water by stealth as part of the game, get them to sit, lie on the pool floor, and they then start to open their eyes, counting fingers, pulling faces, picking up objects, just building up that confidence and getting them out of their, so keeping them in their comfort zone and keeping them happy. Okay, so now we've got the core aquatic skills, the 8 of them. We've now ticked off 4 already, and we've now done the aquatic breathing, which is that making getting their face wet. And that moves into the next one, is actually being able to orientate yourself. Next question to you: why is it important to be able to regain the standing position, do you think? So they can move around, but they've taken their feet off the bottom. Why is it now important for them to regain that position? Anyone got any thoughts?
Safety.
Yeah. A bit more?
Their own confidence.
Yeah. one of the issues, sorry?
So I guess if they're going back to the side, like a river will be shallower as they get towards the side. So they're going to need to be able to regain their kind of standing position, and then they won't need to swim. They can walk themselves out.
Yeah, absolutely. But the other thing which is linked to this is what we call orientation. What children will do often is, if they've been upside down, sometimes they will they'll lose their bearings. And one of the what I mentioned earlier about having to go and investigate a near drowning in a school. So basically, to cut a long story short, it was in Bedford, where I used to be the advisor. Around 2010, I had to go and investigate a near drowning at the swimming baths with some year threes. The vast majority had never been in a body of water, and it was their first ever lesson. And a little boy who was like a little dot, he had a belt on, one of these swimming belts, but it was an adult belt, so it went all the way around his body. So normally when you wear a belt when you're swimming, it either covers, it would just go around to your hips. His went all the way around like a normal belt. And what they were doing, they were blowing ping pong balls across the surface, and he went upside down, and the belt kept him upside down. So he was upside down for about 7 or 8 seconds, but for him, it felt like a lifetime. And the key issue was, because he was new to it, he was naive, he hadn't got the body awareness, the proprioception, or whatever the long word is, to be able to find his feet. It's absolutely vital that children have that body awareness to know where the floor is. And when your feet are off the floor for a long period of time, we lose that. And for us, it seems like something which is really natural. For children, it's not. Some of them will be really struggling with the idea of their body awareness of where is up and where is down. So it's absolutely vital. We've got to do activities to develop the fundamental process of getting your feet back on the bottom. So we can do things with children. So when they build up that confidence to move, we haven't even spoken about swimming yet, the building up confidence, can they do a forward roll in the water? Can they do a backward roll in the water? Can they do a log roll? Can they turn sideways? Could they try and do a handstand, get their feet on the bottom and kick their feet up above the surface? Can they go down and kiss the bottom of the pool and come back up? And so they're doing a surface dive. They need to know where and which way up they are. And it sounds something which is really common sense and natural, but for a lot of children, it's not. We need to come up with activities and ideas for rotation and orientation. Okay. This one hasn't got video. Sorry, this hasn't got sound. So the children are doing activities with a ball, they're turning over. I'm just going to go back a stage. I'm going to do that again. If you watch, so they're using a simple football and they're just turning over. There he goes. He's now on his back. This is a really important skill for children to do. For the rest of us, it seems like, well, why would you turn that? Why would you learn that? Because that must come naturally. For children, it doesn't come naturally. It has to be taught. Well, it's got to be explained. They've got to experience it. So that orientation, knowing which way up and which way is down, is taught. Okay, and that is the next part of these core aquatic skills. So you can see on the right-hand side, rotation and orientation. So nothing's too complicated so far. There's nothing technical. We're coming up with ideas to get children to enter the water, get out of the water, travel across the surface, travel across the floor of the pool in different ways with confidence, breathing and blowing bubbles and getting faces wet, and rotation orientation. So we're over halfway there already. So they are the core aquatic skills. And that leads into the next one. We need to get children relaxed in the water. So we need to come up with ideas that will help them build up floating shapes. So we can do things like varying shapes, working in pairs, groups, what we call alphabet floats. They're trying to make letters. They move from shape to shape. And that builds into what we talk in a minute called the push and glide, where they push off and try and move through the water from a push. And that could be from the floor, from the pool side, on their back, on their front, etc., etc. And we introduce kicking on their front and the back, whatever. But at the moment, it's that floating, which is really, really important. Again, this is a really important skill, which is taught in fun, engaging ways. And going back to the little boy on the Scarborough coast who was rescued by the lifeboat, this is what he did. He did called a float to live shape. a star shape lying on his back, staring at the clouds. So that's taught. So you don't just do buoyancy and shapes and balance for the pure joy of it. You're doing it because it's a vital safety skill. So we get children to float on their back, float on their front. They get into tuck shapes, like on the picture there. They can get different shapes. They can become jellyfishes. They can be mushrooms, and they can maybe do shapes where they're holding onto a partner. So 2 of them are making a shape, a bit like skydivers. 3 or 4 of them. There's loads of fun activities that they can do to build up shapes and floating shapes and buoyancy and balance. And as I said in red at the bottom of my slide there, these are vital and very important safety skills. And if I remember correctly, it's a game, a really fun game that they've got on their left.
Captain's dinner, so you need to find the space. Captain's dinner. Lie back, tummy up. That's our plate. Captain's coming! Oh, we're going to have a new one. Captain's girlfriend. Woo woo! We do that again, Captain's girlfriend. Bomber lads! West! West!
So what we had there was a really simple game, a little bit like a Simon Says type of game where the children were responding to the instructions of the teacher. But all you could see within that game, we didn't see them getting in and out, but we assume they're in and out. But every single one of those core aquatic skills that are ticked off was engaged within that game. So they were doing buoyancy and balance. They were rotating and orientating. They were doing aquatic breathing, so getting their faces wet. They were traveling around from left to right, east to west, and so on. The other really important safety point, which I haven't ticked off, is they were always facing the teacher. So the head was always up, and that's a really vital safety rule from the start of the lessons. You must never turn your back on the teacher. That's what you really must stress with children. And that's a really important safety skill because you're looking for potential rescuers if you're in the water. You're looking for help. So all of these core aquatic skills can be taught or embraced with children in really fun, engaging ways, not simply by beasting them the way that I was maybe, for want of a better phrase, beasted in my PE lessons when I was a kid, both of primary and in secondary school all those years ago. So we've got to do these things in really fun, engaging ways. And that moves into the next of our core aquatic skills, which is streamlining. So streamlining is just, it does what it says on the tin, really. We need to find ways of getting our children to understand and recognize the importance of getting to long, thin, flat body positions. So we've got called the most obvious one, which we can do with children, is called a push and glide. And you can see the little boy at the bottom, he's on the side holding onto the bar and he pushes off the side, going from right to left to make that long, thin shape. That's basically a textbook diagram of a push and glide. So they can do this on the front, they can do it on their back, they can do it on the side, they can do it downwards towards the floor, they can do it from the floor upwards. And it's a key part of all strokes. So this becomes the first move away from all those fun gamey type of activities to actual swimming. At the moment, we've been talking about core aquatic skills. We're now moving into the realms of swimming skills, most of which we'll focus on next time we meet. So here we go. you'll notice on that little video is the fact that children, they were pushing and gliding, and then they were turning over as they were doing it. So automatically we're linking it with orientation and so on. And here's another one.
Continuing to refine the push and glide is vital at every stage. Look for a confident tucked position with the feet on the wall and the head resting in or close to the surface. The body should uncurl smoothly and slide confidently to the surface with the ears in the water. Aids or equipment can be used to achieve this, but should not disrupt the horizontal body position. The push should accelerate from the wall, finishing with pointed toes and legs close together. The arms should be held by the side of the body, and the swimmer has to maintain a balanced, streamlined position. A support teacher may provide support to the pupil in achieving this outcome.
So streamlining is a really important part. That's the first introduction to strokes. But the key point is we've laid a foundation before we get there. And what I've seen in some schools is the children, they're almost going straight to the streamline. They're going straight to the push and glide before they're actually appreciative of the fact that the children can do the other stuff. Now, all those things we've gone through, or I've gone through very quickly with you, there's nothing too technical there. There's nothing that you need to worry about. Because I think one of you, I don't know who it was, said about this worry that because we're not qualified teachers, that people might question our right to teach. There's nothing on that diagram that you cannot teach, or you cannot lead, or you cannot support a teacher with, because there's nothing overly technical there. We haven't got into the strokey bit yet. We're simply talking about core aquatic skills, which are the fun activities we would do with our own children when we go to the beach or when we go to the swimming pool with our own families. We're just doing it in a lot more structured way, but we have to recognize there is a sequence to this. These things are really, really important, and we've got to, for want of a better phrase, they've got to learn to walk before they can run. And entries, exits, getting faces wet are the three most important underlying skills of the core aquatic skills. The rest is then built upon it, but I've shown you through those videos some of the activities and some of the ideas, the sort of things you can do. And as I said, I'm going to give you a whole folder full of resources and posters and various other bits and bobs that you can have a look at, because I'm going to set you some homework. But I'll talk about that in a second. So that leads into developing the strokes, which is the final part of what I want to go through with you today, but I'll explain a little bit more in a minute. So strokes are basically streamlining with arms and legs added on. So your children are getting into floating shapes. We now just bring arms and legs into it, and they're starting to swim. So the body should be as flat as possible to accommodate a stroke. We establish the body position as the first step. So we start with a push and glide. The position of the head influences the body position, and we introduce legs before arms. And we talk about what we call a whole part whole approach, but we'll talk about that next week. So the strokes, we don't do the strokes until the other stuff is established. For some of those children, we don't need to spend too much time on those other things, but you need to be sure the other things are nailed before you start thinking about strokes.
Hey guys, and welcome to Simply Swim. There are 4 competitive swimming strokes. These include breaststroke, backstroke, butterfly, and freestyle. Take a look at the different styles to find the right one for you. Breaststroke. This basic stroke is great for beginners, making it one of the most popular styles. Your legs and arms perform the same motion, making it much simpler to learn. Your head remains above the water. This gives you fantastic visibility while avoiding breathing issues. More advanced versions of this technique include submerging your head under the water. However, the breaststroke is the slowest and less efficient of all the 4 styles. Backstroke. Backstroke is the next advancement from the breaststroke. Swimming on your back, the legs kick up and down in a flutter movement, while your arms execute alternating movements. Swimming on your back means it's easier to breathe, and it's great for long distance swimming. Backstroke is recommended for swimmers with back problems as it works the lower back muscles. It even improves your posture and tightens your core. While starting out, it takes practice finding your balance and to be aware of your surroundings. Butterfly. The butterfly is known as the most unique style. The technique uses a wave-like body undulation to propel yourself through the water. As the stroke requires the legs to move as one, it works out the legs and the bum. This is faster than the previous 2 styles. It also strengthens the core muscles, which are vital to a swimmer's power in the water. However, despite being a fast stroke, it can be tiring and difficult to learn, but it is well worth the effort. Freestyle. The freestyle is swum on the stomach. The feet perform a flutter kick technique as your arms rotate in alternate motion. This is the fastest stroke on this list. That's why it's very popular in swimming competitions. It's also perfect for long distance swimming as it enables you to cover long distances. Like the butterfly, it can be difficult to master. Another issue is that the face is submerged in the water between breaths, but the benefits vastly outweigh the shortcomings. Which is your preferred swimming technique and why? We have tons of swimming tutorials.
Thank you.
And
so what I'm going to do, I'm going to come back to this, my final couple of slides in a minute. What I'm going to do for you now is ask, does anybody have any questions? I've tried to keep it as simple as possible to take away the sharp edges of teaching swimming. But when we meet again in a couple of weeks, I want to really add the meat onto the bones and talk about how we would teach the strokes and the progressions and so on in a lot more detail. So this was deliberately a little bit shorter than an hour and a half, but it's to really lay down, to take off the sharp edges and remove the potential anxiety about where we should be focusing our swimming with young children who are non-swimmers. So has anybody any questions at this particular point?
In terms of a first lesson, where it asked about like some kind of assessment, we've gone through a couple of different ways of working out who should go into which group, who's a swimmer, who's a non-swimmer, etc. Is there a kind of an accepted done thing? Because we used to just get them to swim and then just kind of group them that way, and then we kind of went away from that because it's a bit old school, I think.
I'm aware of one school. In fact, that's the third time I've referenced it now. Where I had to go and investigate that near drowning with the little boy who got himself upside down. What their instructor was doing from the swimming pool is what we call sheep dipping. So they were basically getting all the kids to go in the water, and if they came up spluttering and not very happy, they went into the very much the basic group, and if they seemed to be a bit more happy, they went on the other side. So that's probably not good practice. I'll think about that one, because I think a lot of it comes down to your intuition and talking to parents and getting a feel. I would make the first lesson very much a fun lesson, like talking, getting in, getting out, moving around the water, getting your feet on the bottom, and you'll get a feel straight away very quickly for which children are more confident than others, and which children are taking their feet off the bottom, and who's been in water before. And you can use your own intuition and your professional judgment about how to differentiate from there onwards, I think. But I don't think there's necessarily any real benchmarks for non-swimmers as such, but I'll have a dig around and see what I can find. But I would do a very introductory core aquatic skills building confidence lesson first time you meet with them in the water, and use your own professional judgment to get a feel for who's confident, who's not, which children are taking their feet off the bottom, or which children are not taking their feet off the bottom, which children won't let go of the side. And you'll soon find your lesson is becoming differentiated by the needs of the class. Okay. The first time, I mean, it depends what age group you're talking about, but at that point, I would expect you may well have a couple of teachers in the water as well. But the leader of the group, the teacher in charge, should be on the pool side. But I would have no problem with, sometimes you may have, I mean, I can think of one class where they went to the local swimming pool, so a big swimming pool, they had 25 kids in the water. I think they had 17 adults, because they worked with the university where there were some trainee teachers, but there was almost like a 1-to-2 or 1-to-1 basis because some of the kids, they genuinely needed an adult each to help them. Okay, because that's the level some of these children may well be at. Okay. Any other questions? What I'm going to do with you is I'm going to send over to Jason some resources, a Google Drive, and some instructions. And what I'm going to ask you to do is have a look through the resources, and I will identify a couple which for you to prioritize looking at. And I'm going to set you a challenge, and that is I want you to prepare, and it doesn't have to be a formal, rigid lesson plan, but to prepare some ideas for how you would do that, an introductory lesson or or a learning episode with children to build up one of those core aquatic skills. So, for example, you might say, okay, I'm going to do an activity to build up confidence to get faces wet. Or you might think I'm going to plan a 15-minute activity for children around shapes and floating. But I'm going to set you a challenge where you're going to go away and come up with some ideas on how to teach that one learning episode, and it'll be your choice about what you want to teach. Okay, is everybody okay with that?
Yeah, our fire alarms just started going off.
Okay, all right. That's why Jason's gone. Okay, he's back.
It's a test. It's a test, Chris.
Okay, Jason, what I was just saying, are you running off again?
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, so basically, Jason, when you ran off to sort of find out what was going on with the fire alarm, I'm going to set everybody a challenge, and that is you're going to prepare a 15-minute episode. It doesn't have to be rigid and with all sorts of, I will send over a template for a lesson plan, but you don't necessarily have to use it. But just some ideas on how you would teach one aspect of that core aquatic skills diagram. So you might choose yourselves to do, you might say, I'm going to do 15 minutes on shapes. I might do 15 minutes on orientation, or I might do 15 minutes on getting faces wet, or whatever it might be. Just a series of ideas linking up. And I will point out within the folder I'm going to send you where the best ideas might be. So the next time we meet, which will be in 2 weeks, we can then share our ideas with the group. And then that will lead into how we would build on that and how we would introduce strokes with children from basic all the way, not necessarily through to being Adam PT, but how we're going to actually build on that streamlining, pushing and gliding into recognizable strokes. And that will form the basis of a really rigid way of teaching swimming to primary school kids. Okay, is everybody okay with that? So my final thoughts here. So pupils should progress in all areas of the PE subject content. We must stress safety over technique, because the swimming pool is probably the most dangerous environment primary school children will work in on a regular basis. We must always create opportunities for children to evaluate their own strengths and successes, so they will know how they're getting on. We've got to give them chances to feedback and evaluate and work with each other. See if we can find other ways of developing curricular areas, so connect it with other areas of the curriculum. Partnership is vital, so partnership with each other, partnership with the swimming pool, partnership with other teachers, partnership with the lifeguard, etc. We must never lose sight of the quality of our teaching. And we must remember, school swimming is often the one and only opportunity for children to learn to swim and know how to be safe in and around water. When they leave primary school, if they've not learned to swim in primary school, the vast majority of children will not learn to swim after that, because unless a secondary school has got a swimming pool, they're not going to learn in the secondary school. And if they haven't learned to swim in primary school, the chances are their parents aren't going to make arrangements for them to learn to swim after that. So we've got to prioritize this. It has to be done. So it's likely that children who don't learn to swim during school lessons in primary schools will never learn to swim. And we've got to address that. So your priority is to address water safety. We've got to get our kids drown proof. The rest will follow. Okay. Has anybody got any questions? Has that made sense? Has that been helpful?
Yeah, it's really good. Thanks very much.
Okay.
Yeah,
so there we are. That's me and a unicorn. So I will, Jason, as soon as I finish this, I'm going to have a quick cup of coffee, and then I'm going to send you some resources within the next half an hour for you to share with your colleagues with some instructions. But I'm going to ask everybody to go away, and it doesn't have to be in depth. It doesn't have to be, Ofsted level planning, but just to plan some progressions and some ideas to build up a core aquatic skill of their choice, of your choice. Is everyone okay with that? Okay. Thank you for your time. I will see you in a couple of weeks. You know what, there's my details on there if you have any questions, but I'll put all that in the email I send to Jason. Okay.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Cheers.